45-year-old American woman marries three brothers. A true story of infidelity. Have you ever uncovered a secret so bizarre, so impossible to process, that your first instinct is to laugh just to keep from falling apart? That's what happened to me the night I found out my mother, my quiet, book-loving, cardigan-wearing mother, had once been married to not one, but three brothers. And what shook me most wasn't the scandal itself, but the realization that everything I believed about loyalty, love, and family had been built on a story she never told them. My name is Clara, and until a year ago, I thought I knew who my mother was. Diane Holbrook, age 45, American, school librarian by profession, expert pie maker by reputation. She raised me alone, filling the gaps in our quiet life with bedtime stories, weekend garage sales, and gentle reminders that people are more complicated than they appear. I always thought she meant others. I never imagined she meant herself. The truth began unraveling on a warm June afternoon, when Mom invited me to help her clean out the attic of our old house in Montana. The air smelled like dust and cedar, and sunlight slipped through the cracked window in thin, trembling lines. Mom hummed softly as she opened an old trunk. She looked calm, almost detached, like she had rehearsed this. I didn't suspect anything until she pulled out a faded wedding photo, her wedding photo, except the groom wasn't my father, and standing behind him, smiling like it was the happiest day of their lives, were two more men, all three sharing the same dark eyes, the same sharp jawlines, the same unmistakable resemblance. "Mom," I whispered, the picture trembling in my hand. Who are they?" She stared at the photo for a long, quiet moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, but steady. "They were my husbands," she said. "All three of them." I felt something cold slip down my spine. The silence between us said everything we were too afraid to say out loud. That was the moment my mother's carefully folded life began to unfold before me. A life I had never known. That we sat on the attic floor, crossing our legs like children about to hear a fairy tale, except this one didn't promise a happy ending. Mom held the photo in her lap, brushing her thumb over the face of the man at the center, tall, dark-haired, with the hint of a smirk that made him look like he always knew more than he would admit. "That's Miguel," she said. "He was my first love. And the first brother I married." I swallowed hard. "First?" Mom nodded. "Miguel and I met when I was 20. I had gone to New Mexico to volunteer at a community center. He was working there with his family. He was magnetic." She paused, as though searching for the right shape of the memory. "It was like stepping into a memory I didn't know I still held," she said quietly. "The way he looked at me. I felt seen in a way I never had before." I listened, torn between fascination and disbelief. "But Miguel had two brothers," she continued. "Tomas and Rafael. They were close. Too close, maybe. Where Miguel was gentle, Tomas was ambitious. And Rafael," she smiled sadly. "He was the one who understood me the most." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You married all three?" "Not at the same time." She winced. But the lines blurred. "More than they should have." She told me how she had married Miguel first, full of hope and adrenaline. But life with him was a storm, passionate, exhilarating, and unpredictable. When Miguel disappeared for long stretches to find work, it was his brother Tomas who stayed behind to help her. Tomas, who listened. Tomas, who cared. Tomas, who eventually confessed that he had loved her since the moment they met, and Miguel never suspected. I asked, my voice barely audible. "Oh, he suspected." Her eyes grew distant. "And that suspicion is what destroyed us." She described the night Miguel returned unexpectedly, walked in on her and Tomas arguing, though she never said what the argument was about. Miguel assumed the worst. Or maybe the truth. She wasn't even sure anymore. The brothers fought, as violently as they loved. And in the aftermath, Miguel vanished from her life for good. "What about Rafael?" I asked. Mom hesitated. Her hands tightened around the edges of the photo. "Rafael was different," she said. "He was the peacekeeper. The dreamer. When Tomas and I married, Rafael was our witness. And he was happy for us, or at least he pretended to be. The attic felt smaller, the air heavier, and then. You married him too? Her breath hitched. Not right away. Only after Tomas died. My head snapped up. Died? Mom, it was a car accident, she whispered. And Raphael was the one who helped me stand afterward. He never asked for anything. Never pushed. But grief makes you cling to the gentlest hand offered. And his was always there. So you married him out of loneliness? Loneliness, she agreed. And love. A softer kind than before. I sat back, overwhelmed. I didn't know whether to feel sympathy, shock, or anger. It was a tangle of all three, so why didn't you tell me any of this? She looked me in the eyes then, her voice barely above a breath, because I was afraid you wouldn't forgive me. We left the attic for the living room, the wooden floor creaking under us like it was listening. Mom sat on the sofa, folding her hands in her lap with the posture of someone preparing for a verdict that I took the armchair opposite her. Mom, I said, there's still something you're not telling me. I can feel it. Her lip trembled, not dramatically, but in that tiny, devastating way people try to hide. There is one more truth, she whispered. The hardest one. I leaned forward, my heartbeat stumbling. You said you married them out of loneliness, I said. But that's not the whole story, is it? She shook her head. No. The truth is, I loved all three of them. Not in the same way, but completely. And the shame of that, of loving three brothers, was heavier than any grief I carried. The room seemed to contract around us. You loved them all. I echoed, trying to wrap my mind around it. Yes. Tears filled her eyes but did not fall. And each time, I thought it would be the last. I told myself it was fate, or accident, or circumstance. But really, I was looking for the parts of Miguel I had lost. I kept trying to rebuild him through his brothers. Her voice cracked, soft and apologetic, and the terrible, unkind truth is, I never stopped loving Miguel. Even when I married Tomas. Even when I married Raphael. Even when they died. It hit me like a sharpened hail. She had loved one man so deeply that she had married his echoes. Mom, I whispered, not sure what emotion I was reaching for. She looked down at her hands. I don't expect you to understand. Or forgive me. But you deserve to know. All these years. I was afraid you'd think I was immoral. Or weak. Or disloyal. Her vulnerability was so raw that something inside me softened. I realized then that her story wasn't about infidelity, it was about a woman who had loved too much, too deeply, and carried the consequences alone. Why tell me now? I asked. She looked up, her eyes shimmering. Because secrets don't die just because the people who lived them do. They grow. And I didn't want this one to outlive me. We sat together in the quiet that followed, both of us suspended between past and present. Outside, the sun was sinking behind the mountains, spilling amber light across the room. It felt like the end of something, not just a story, but a silence that had lived between us for years. That I took her hand, surprised by how small it felt in mine. Mom, I said gently, I don't have to agree with everything you did. But I can try to understand it. And I still love you. She exhaled, a relieved, trembling breath. Thank you, she whispered. That's all I ever hoped for. As night settled in, I thought about the brothers, about love that fractures and reforms, about choices made in grief and passion, about the impossible standards we hold for the people who raise us. My mother wasn't the woman I thought she was, but maybe that made her more human, not less. And as I placed the old wedding photo back into the trunk, I realized something important. Our parents' stories don't always make sense, but they shape us anyway. And understanding them, even imperfectly, might be the closest we ever come to understanding ourselves.